Fani Willis, DA, says, well, not too much, but the lieutenant governor of Georgia, the former, says, yeah, she has enough to indict Trump right now. Let me give you the 411. All right, you're looking at the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia. She is leading the criminal investigation into former President Donald Trump for tampering, trying to manipulate an actual certified election. Now, Georgia's former lieutenant governor, he's a Republican. He was lieutenant governor during the time of this saga. Now, an on-air CNN commentator said the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, now has enough evidence to indict former President Donald Trump for his alleged role in interfering with the result of the state's 2020 presidential election. Let's put up a picture of Geoff Duncan, the former lieutenant governor. He said, and I quote, "There's enough information for him to be indicted," Geoff Duncan said on Wednesday. Duncan, who has been a strong Trump critic, chose not to run for re-election last year, clearing a path that led Burt Jones, a strong Trump supporter, to win the seat in November. Duncan's comments come as Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney. We've been talking about Robert McBurney this week. Robert McBurney, the judge, continues to mull over whether a grand jury report on alleged 2020 Georgia presidential election interference should be made public. The DA, Fani Willis, does not want it made public now, citing it may compromise potential defendants. Well, what does that tell us? That out of this grand jury, special grand jury, there will be defendants. There's another dynamic I always have to mention for the record. This is a special purpose grand jury in Georgia, which means they have broad investigative authority, but they do not have the authority to actually indict. You have to impanel normative grand jury to accept the recommendations from this grand jury in order to indict. Also, federal prosecutors were going to charge Donald Trump on his way out of the door, talking about the presidency, but they didn't. All right, let's get into it. Federal prosecutors considered charging Donald Trump on his way out of office. Why? Over hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. That's according to a new book. Prosecutors in the Southern District of New York found substantial evidence against Trump during their investigation, which resulted in charges against his former attorney, Michael Cohen. This was back in 2018. But they did not consider charging Trump at that time due to the Justice Department guidance that a sitting president cannot be indicted. But that changed by January 2021. That's according to a new book from a CNN senior legal analyst. Now, let me say this. You know, all of the rhetoric about no one is above the law in America, damn lies. It's a lie. Now, should it be that a person has to adhere to the same laws that everyone else does? Of course, that should be the standard. That should be how it works. But there are people that are in fact treated as if they are above the law. Let's go back to this presidential dynamic. Guidance from the Department of Justice is what the prosecutors cited as to why they did not indict Donald Trump while he was president. Well, first of all, that's a bunch of bull. The Constitution does not provide any direction as it relates to if you can or cannot charge a sitting president with a crime. Why? Because the thought was just so extreme. The Constitution was not written for a person like Donald Trump. And it is ironic that even Mueller decided to cite a very similar dynamic and said it was unconstitutional. Well, please point where in the Constitution does it say you cannot do this? There is a memo written to protect another corrupt president from the DOJ. And they utilized that memo in order to say, oh, we can't touch Trump while he's president. But what about after he was president? All right, there's more. The draft Cohen indictment, all right? The draft Cohen indictment was a full accounting running over 50 pages in one iteration. Essentially, both a formal indictment of Cohen and a public excoriation of Donald Trump, only without charges attached. So the analyst wrote in his forthcoming book, Untouchable, the SDNY's draft indictment left no doubt. Trump wasn't merely a bystander or an unwitting beneficiary of the campaign finance crime. He was the driving force behind the scheme and likely criminally liable for it. Well, the list goes on and on as far as his criminal conduct. Cohen said, well, Trump actually is the one who should be indicted. Cohen has maintained he did do wrong, but he was doing it at the direction of the then president of the United States. Well, once again, another example of a man being above the law in these United States of America. Will we now look at the reasons these prosecutors decided not to actually indict, not to charge? Highly doubt it. All right, Geoff, thoughts here?
I'm really looking forward to at least seeing if charges are finally going to stick to Teflon Don. I want to be hopeful, sure, and I'm glad you laid out the background as far as what needs to be done in order to bring charges to him. But just 3 days ago, Attorney General Letitia James in New York said, as we have shown all along, we have a legitimate legal case against him and his organization. Is it going to happen? We heard the man's phone call with Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find, quote, 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have because we won the state. And I want to add, there's nothing wrong with saying you know that you've recalculated. What could that mean other than we're going to steal this thing and you're going to help me? He tried to mob boss his way into an elected office and he seemingly thinks he's going to get away with it. Why wouldn't he? He's always gotten away with it. He's put himself in positions of privilege, and then this country put him in another level, in a position of privilege to figure out ways to get away with things. And it's worked for him. So I guess congrats to him, but at some point this has to end. Whether it's in Georgia or New York or wherever else, somebody has to stick these things to him so he cannot be above the law.
Yeah, somebody needs to ish or get off the toilet at some point, all right?